Welcome to On Air with Chai, a podcast that inspires, brings hope, shows resilience, and strength. Thank you for joining us on our last episode of Season 1. Hope you guys enjoyed what you have heard so far. Morty and I are just going to be wrapping things up today, so hope you guys enjoy. And as always, don't forget to tell your friends about this podcast and share it on your socials as well. And leave us that 5-star review. Everybody, and welcome to the last episode of Season 1 of On Air with Chai. Of course, I'm always joined with my amazing co-host, Morty Rothman. Welcome.
Hello.
Bryan, as everybody knows as well. So this is, as the title states, the Season 1 wrap-up. We've had, 10 interviews, if you count the two with Rabbi Scholar, the back-to-back, part 1 and 2, with multiple hours of editing and marketing and posting and everything going behind the scenes. So it's definitely been an amazing, really interesting journey with this whole thing. Just learning the ropes of it all again and just getting people in and interviewing them and hearing the stories. I know there was times in this process during the interviews where you've sat there and nudged me kind of to say something. You're just sitting there quietly kind of thing, because honestly, I don't know how you do this. I was in shock and awe through all of them and not knowing how to respond to what you're hearing for the first time. Because as a volunteer coordinator, I'm not hearing these full stories. I'm hearing the Coles notes of them. I'm hearing what we need to hear to be able to service the families and what we're told. We don't get to hear the full nitty gritty, how the doctors and the parents communicated, how the parents pretty much in Asaf Benoon's case, how he somehow came up with the treatment plan for his son. We don't get to hear that with Amanda Kaufman, how her coach dedicated her last skate to her. So hearing these kinds of stories like Bracha Silver, you don't hear that, how upset she is and how angry she is towards God and how she turned her back on God and everything. We don't hear that side of the things. And I think knowing that and seeing that aspect of it all really just, it changes everything. It changes your views of what's really going on here. It changes your views of what Chai Lifeline really is and what they are doing and how they're operating and how they are helping these families. Because it's one thing for me just to send a big sibling out or to send a meal out, but to know the full backstory of it, I feel the more that the people even in the office know these stories, a lot of things would get better and better and better. Not that they're not amazing now.
So, first of all, Bryan, I want to say thank you very much for everything you've done for the podcast, from the background. A lot of work went into this, from all the editing and the posting and the, even the little jingle we all hear in the beginning of the show. So, thank you for everything that you've done. It's been an interesting journey too. I didn't know how podcasts work, and I listen to them. It's very easy for me to click play on my smartphone, but there's a lot of background and a lot of stuff that goes on it, and you did great, and it's been a great honor and opportunity for me to co-host with you. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. I've enjoyed every moment of it.
That said, I think that there's I think with everything in life, there's always more to than what it seems. Everything that goes on in the background here at Chai, and how we just scratch the surface sometimes of what we're dealing with and what we're doing, and we never know the ripple implications of all these things. And something small that we might have done for a family can have massive effects later on, or even then. And sometimes things that you don't even realize are happening in the moment, a volunteer gets touched in a way that will impact him or her for quite some time. And I think that's a lesson for life. It's not just about Chai Lifeline. I think everywhere, in any business, so often we take for granted these kind of things, and we don't realize the amount of work and effort and tiresome things that just go into everything that people try to accomplish. And this is no different. And I was saying to somebody early on that, and sorry for my rant, but like I could see when I was telling some of these stories how much it changed your perception of the organization, and you're in the organization. And it's been like, these are stories and these are things that, astound even me to this day, some of these things that happened. And I could, there, what we touched on this past season is like a scratching the surface. There's so many stories and so many impactful moments that I look forward to sharing in the future seasons with people. And whether it's things that people can learn from in their own business and take away, or concepts and ideas that they can learn from a sick child or a family through a resilient, like, just there's so much there. And I had no idea that even once we got started, what we would be capable of sharing. So thank you.
No, like, listen, I gotta thank you for just allowing us to do this, because I mean, yeah, it's something that's a hit and miss. You never know what the listenership's going to be, but it has been pretty decent for our first season, and I'm excited for our second season. We have started recording it. We have some amazing guests lined up for it. I'm curious though to know what is one thing that you really took away from this first season from the interviews? What's something that you learned that you may not have realized before?
It was really interesting for me to get to know, and I've worked with Rabbi Scholar for so many years, but to really understand, the thought process and some of the mentality that even to this day is really imbued within Chai Lifeline. That concept of, just get the job done, and we just do that. That's how it works at Chai Lifeline. And it's something that rings true to this day, I think, in staff as well, and people who are successful at the organization. And it's interesting for me to see how that kind of went from the top down, and still rings true to this day. Meeting Dr. Khan, who shared with me, you think research is the most mundane thing, but really a lot of creativity has to come into research and how people create the concepts or the whole research project. And how he creates, or he uses his creativity in his research projects and things like that. It was very interesting to me, to our human etch a sketch and stories with Bracha Silver, and how she, where she got that strength from, and Asaf understanding, the lengths to which a father will go to save their child or to be there for their child. I mean, there's so many lessons there, and there's so many takeaways from, to people's businesses, to people's lives. And I just hope that we helped, people who took the time to listen, that we enriched them, and we shared with them some of these incredible lessons and opportunities and learnings. And my hope is only more and better to continue into season 2.
I couldn't agree more. The one thing I took away from this is everyone's attitude of perspective. How that seemed to be the key ingredient in most of the stories, was perspective, and how it changed drastically for most of the people. Like, either for fathers, like for instance, for Asaf Benoon, when his son was sick, like his whole perspective on his family, how he was going to be towards them, how like him and his wife grew up. What was the word they used? I guess hardened. That was the word that they used. Like growing up hardened. It's like they kind of learned to loosen up a little bit more and have a little more understanding. And the same thing with a lot of the other ones. Amanda Kaufman, with her perspective of life and what she expected out of her treatment, was very different than what actually took place once she stepped back on the ice. So it's that whole aspect of perspective was just through and through, like without a question, like the main thing I ended up taking away from that. And that is one thing that you can definitely take away in life and in business, is the perspective of what you're doing, who you're helping, and how you're doing it. And I found that really fascinating.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that change in perspective, and I think, it's almost in everything in life, so to speak, because you really have, we all have certain expectations, and we show up in any given situation with a certain expectation, whether that's we sit down at a restaurant and we expect to be served in a timely fashion, or and then we get upset when we're not, to that's something small, to something major, like, hey, we expect our life to go really well, and have no surprise health issues whatsoever, and how we handle those changes in what's going to be our circumstances for going forward. It's I don't know where I saw it, but I recently saw I think it was a podcast where someone says, okay, like, they went to a room full of people, and they're like, who likes surprises? Like, by a show of hands, who likes surprises? And, like, the whole room raises their hand. We all like surprises. And she's
Absolutely.
like, and the presenter was like, you don't all like surprises. Like, what do you mean? Of course we do. It's like, because when you hear surprise, you think, oh, I'm gonna get a prize, I'm gonna win this, something's happening, I win the lottery, right? But surprises are, they're not necessarily good. They're bad too, right? They could be almost all of a sudden I had a health scare. All of a sudden, this tragedy happened. That's a surprise. That's not something, I would argue that most people don't actually like surprises. They want things to stay kind of, status quo, good or bad, just they're comfortable. And all these families and a lot of these people are people who really push themselves out of their comfort zone, whether it's on their own for the greater good, or whether it's because they were forced into certain circumstances, or both. And it's just an interesting thing that we need to be pushed out of our comfort zone a little bit. And I hope that, again, this podcast help people make that, with that leap, whether it was when they were dealing with things in their own life that are super difficult, to deciding, hey, I'm going to make a change and do something different and be a little bit more resilient in this area or that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that's where High Lifeline really comes into play with a lot of people. I mean, if you looked at Eden Villenov's story, I mean, that whole thing was out of left field. Like, I mean, that's a surprise out of everything. Like, her case manager ends up being her lifeline.
I mean, for her, it's like she's 14 years old, or maybe she's like even younger, and to wake up and not be able to see, like,
Yeah.
you just wake up one morning and can't see, and, like, all of a sudden, oh yeah, your whole life is now different. Like,
She's
everything's
failing
changed,
too. Yeah.
and then from the fact that she got to connect with High Lifeline, and then all the great things that happened that we were able to provide her with, to the point where she built a relationship with our case manager, who was generous on her own. She did that. I can't say High Lifeline had anything to do with it, but that's the kind of people High Lifeline attracts, where somebody would be that involved with a family and would give of themselves in that way. It's truly incredible. And to be able to look back and say, like, hey, High Lifeline really does save lives, whether, you want to say on a social support level, on a mental health perspective, or in that case, literally saved a life.
Yep. Absolutely. So before we wrap this up, is there anything else you want to add to this season, or any closing words you'd like to give to the listeners?
Um, to be honest with you, I wish I would have spent more time thinking about it, because there's always important things to impart and to share. But if there's one major thing that I would want to say is I want to thank all of you, all of our listeners, all the people who took the time out of their busy day and they could choose anything to listen to, and you chose us. And I hope we entertained you. I hope it was meaningful and showed some purpose to yourselves and to your lives, and added something positive, to make a difference in your life. And High Lifeline wouldn't exist without listeners and donors. And we're here for the community. That's what it is. So I'm really just truly grateful for everybody here, for you, Bryan, for putting this together. And I look forward to continuing on in season 2, 3, and 4.
Me
How
too.
about you? How about
Amen.
you, Bryan?
Amen.
Anything you want to add?
I really am grateful for you even just giving me the opportunity to put this all together and bring it forward. Also, you were a huge help with it. You carried a lot of the conversations as I sat there dumbfounded, listening to what I was listening to, and just gobsmacked most of the time. And, like, you're kind of prodding me, like I said at the beginning, to, like, say something, because a lot of the time I was in complete shock from what I was hearing. So thank you for helping me with this. Thank you for carrying along. with it. And absolutely thank you to the listeners, and to the people and the families that gave their time to us and it allowed us to interview them and get into their lives and open their lives up to all the listeners around. Without those stories, this wouldn't happen. And, Chai Lifeline wouldn't be around without them needing us. So, I mean, thank you to all those people and to all the listeners and to everybody around. And yeah, absolutely. I look forward to the next bunch of seasons.
Okay. Thanks, Bryan.
Thank you. On Air with Chai is a Chai Lifeline Canada project, produced by myself, Bryan Strasberg, hosted by myself and the Executive Director of Chai Lifeline Canada, Mordechai Rothman. Guests are booked by Orly Davis and graphic design is done by Candice Alper. On Air with Chai is edited by myself, and the music is provided by Music Unlimited at pixabay.com. To learn more about Chai Lifeline and how you can help us, please visit our website at chailifelinecanada.org.